Hey there, Knicks fans. How you doing? It's your boy, Jonathan Macri, with you for another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. Coming at you. Have the Knicks scored any more points in the last 24 hours? Holy shit. We're recording this at 9:15 p.m. on Monday night. Hi, Jeremy. It's been a long time. When's the last time I saw you?
I think it was like a month ago. It was a long time.
I wasn't even talking. I was referring.
Oh, that, yes, in person. Yeah, it's been a day. And for those who did not see me, what will be Sunday, it's been a minute.
Yes. For those of you who, for the vast majority of the people listening and watching who were not with us at the Garden on Sunday night, it has been a while since you've seen Jeremy. So yes, welcome back. It does not feel like a welcome back for me because, again, I saw you less than 24 hours ago. Although, frankly, I wish that I had not seen you. Because, can I just say something at the top? So we'll talk about the event that we just did because it was a great event and we had a wonderful time. I guess no, we can just talk about it now. We had our annual KFS outing to the Garden on Sunday night, and I did not have chance to go on social media really at all today, or frankly check my emails or DMs or anything. But like I glanced briefly at, and I saw some people that had tagged me or whatever, and was like, or tagged KFS with the kindest things in the world. Had a great time. You know, the loss was unfortunate, but like either I met John Starks or, you know, got to spend time with other Knicks fans, all that stuff. I wish I could have that sort of spirit. If I'm at a sporting event and my team performs as the Knicks did on Sunday night, it is very difficult for me to come away from that event feeling the level of positivity that others seem to. So I is that a me thing? I think that's a me thing. It's a me thing. Okay.
You hate fun. That's just the way it is. Because I was also there. I was present. And
you were
despite the result, I had a wonderful time chatting with people that I had not had the pleasure of meeting before or got to meet once again and see. So yes, I regret to inform you that despite the fact that I was pissed off because last year when we went to the game, it was, I think, one of the highest scoring games that we've seen in a long time, which was 145 to 135. And this year I thought that both teams wouldn't even combine for 145 points, and it still didn't impact my mood because I was thrilled to be there. So I respect the sportsmanship for you. It's you're there for one reason only. It's to win a basketball game. That's admirable.
I don't know that my position is deserving of respect, really, any positive emotion, but I appreciate you saying that. Thank you. I don't know. One of these years, we're going to witness a win as a Knicks Film School family. It's going to happen. I'm confident.
It happened for the Cavs game, which was the most important of all of them. Like if you had to have one win, let it be the playoffs. But of course, it wasn't in MSG when we had it. I agree. We're going to, at some point, it's going to happen. But I think it's hard to argue against a curse at this point. It just is. And you know what? We're going to keep doing it. Like, I'm sorry. If you hate it that much, bet money line for the opponent that we happen to see. Like it's that simple. You save folks a lot of money, either going to the game or staying at home. Congratulations. No,
that was a good joke by you on the way out. We should just all bet the money line. So this is an interesting episode here because as I said, we're recording this at 9. It's on 9:19 p.m. on Monday night. Coming off, I feel like I say this all the time. These roller coaster weeks that could start off, one way and reach either a very high or a very low. But the most recent event the most recent outcome of a game tends to color our conversation. This one, there's an extra added layer of complexity because, Jeremy, as you know, the most recent outcome in terms of the game is not the most recent significant event that has transpired in relation to this team. Because I do consider the news report from several hours ago, I think Shams broke the news, that OG Anunoby is going to be listed as something other than out for the Philadelphia 76ers game, the next Philadelphia 76ers game, take place on Tuesday night. I'll throw it to you for this. What are your initial impressions, and then we'll get the ball rolling on the week that was and go from there.
Say my initial impression is if I were to have missed multiple podcasts, I picked the perfect time for that to have happened because, man, I mean, first of all, kudos to Benji. I appreciate him as always stepping in. Cost me a couple wins. When I was listening to the first pod, I was thinking like, Benji, take 1 and 3. You got this. Take 1 and 3. And he says 2 and 2. I'm like, damn it. Great. And I want Benji to know that it was me. I did it. I threw the fucking tomatoes. No, Benji was great. I appreciate him as always. But just in terms of, it's great that OG is coming back. Yeah. This whole period just felt like purgatory, but that's because I was able to be a little bit more hands off. I didn't have to live and die with every win. But it's nice to get him back. I mean, you guys had your conversation, of course, about would you rather Randall back? Would you rather OG back? You had to take one or the other. And for a team that is so desperately in need of shooting and the defense, like just get one of them back at this point. It doesn't just whoever's healthy, play for the love of God, please just do it. So OG coming back and not being listed as out would have been nice if it had been for the game that we were present for. But
sure,
as long as it's the next game possible, that's great.
Yeah. It feels it's interesting because we got a report. I don't want to get too far into this because like the most important thing is he's coming back, but like we got a report, not a report. We got Tibbsing around before I think it was the Magic game. Listen, it's game 64, whatever the hell it is, 65. It's all starting to blend together. But a recent press conference in which Tibbs basically said, in not as many words, OG's like he's ready to go. We're waiting for them to clear him, and there's nothing. I mean, he couldn't identify anything that he was aware of that was like keeping OG Anunoby out, and yet there was still no clearance. And that I don't think that had changed before the first Philly game. It didn't, obviously, because it didn't play. And now, after the loss to Philly that we experienced, and ahead of this other Philly game, which takes on, maybe we'll get to it a little bit later in the show. But I would say it takes on added importance because now the tiebreaker is officially on the line. If they win this game, they win the tiebreaker for the season, and we'll get to the standings in a minute. But I don't know. I wonder how much where things are in terms of the standings, in terms of where they are, in terms of just like the state of the team, how bad they looked against Philly. I mean, my God, I wonder how much that influences things here, and the reason I'm inclined to say that. And again, I know we're still going to get to the games that happen this week because those games are important, but this has to be the lead, is the Randall news too, which I think now there's been some reporting from me and Bagley. Tibbs has spoken on this where it's like Randall was seemingly coming along here. And now it's like, oh, wait, well, hold on. We may be pumping the brakes a little bit. We're not rushing him back. In my mind, these things are almost connected because I'm wondering if the Knicks are like figuring out, I'm going to screw up the analogy, but like how much of our cake can we have and also be able to eat? Like OG's close, so let's get him back. But Randall, if we push him too fast, if we push him too hard, maybe we lose him for the playoffs. So let's try to like keep him out longer, closer to the playoffs, get to the playoffs, maintain the top 6 seed. Like I think they're really kind of walking a few different tightropes here. And I'm wondering, that's the impression I'm getting. And maybe that's me making too much of the various reporting on these matters. How much am I wearing a tinfoil hat with all this stuff? Or do you just like take all this at face value?
It's hard to take it at face value because the Knicks are oftentimes a little deceptive, or at least they don't leak quite a bit in terms of what they want to do. Yeah. But I would say, I'm a Yankees fan. And the one thing I feel like I say every single season is, honestly, just get everyone healthy come September and you're good for October. John, I got to be honest. I feel like it never actually works. And I just tell myself every year that it's going to be fine. And it isn't. And it gets to a point where I'm feeling that a little bit here, where it's like, just get the Knicks healthy by the start of April and it's fine. And it may not be. And that's just simply the way it is. And there are only a certain number of games where they can burn through and come away not burned, right? Like they can survive a certain amount.
Yeah.
I don't know how many they have that are left, considering how tight that race is. So, but with that being said, like, do I think that you could get a healthy Julius back and it doesn't take him very long to get into the swing of things? I do. Yeah. I think it would take someone like Mitch a little bit longer, not because of like inability to grasp what he's able to do, but just simply because I think the role that he plays, the injury that he had, it might be a little bit tougher for him to work his way back there. But we'll see. It's also like I expect Randall to enter the starting lineup, of course. Like, who would he be playing ahead of? I mean, but with Mitch, it's like, you could see him coming back in a smaller role and still making a greater impact. But if you're expecting him to be what he was doing beforehand, I would be a little surprised.
I completely agree with you with Randall, where when he's back, he's gonna be back. Like again, there's no lower leg, no lower body injuries. So like getting back into game shape theoretically shouldn't be a problem. And it's going to be a matter of, I think from everything I read and understand about this injury that he's had, it's going to be a matter of him just feeling comfortable being himself out there. And the player he is, the guy that he is he's one of, if not the most physical basketball player in the NBA today. I'm happy you brought up Mitch. Let's just get all the injury stuff over with now, because I found it interesting. And I again, some of this stuff, maybe it's just because it's been a long season. I feel like I'm going a little crazy here. Bagley had a report after the Magic game talking about Hartenstein, and Hartenstein looked awesome against the Magic. I thought he was maybe the lone, I don't want to call him a bright spot against Philly in game one against Philly, but like I thought he looked okay. Like the whole team played like crap, but he looked okay, like just like he looked against Orlando. And Bagley said afterwards, he's like, this is all part of the plan to ramp up Hartenstein to get back to the place where he could play 30 minutes a night in the playoffs. Those were Ian's words. And I probably ask Ian directly if I should breathe too much into this, but I was like, it's interesting because 30 minutes a night, that implies that if Mitch does come back, well, he's going to be limited to a traditional sub role, of like a 8, 9, 10 minute stint per half. Which kind of goes along with what your theory is here, which is that if and when he comes back, it's not going to be automatic that he's the guy that we remember when he last was on the court.
If memory serves, the net rating with Randall and Hartenstein versus Randall and Mitch is also far different. Yes. And the nice thing that's been reported is that because the relationship between Hartenstein and Mitch is so great that it's not like anyone's competing. They are on the same team. They know they're on the same team. So if you're not having issues with guys feeling like they need to play more or not, and even if you are, like it's playoffs, by the time Mitch would really be in the full swing of things. So just deal with it. Like you guys have one common goal. It shouldn't be about playing time when it's playoffs. It's about winning a title. And even if you feel like you can't do that, putting yourselves in the best position is the best way to do that with the players you have on staff. So it'll be fascinating, of course, when he comes back, but I don't anticipate it being chaotic. Of course, I just hope that he's there. Precious has been great. I also look at Precious as more of a great relief pitcher that you probably wouldn't trust in the playoffs. And I know I'm talking a lot of baseball analogies here, but it stands true. I mean, you wouldn't trust, if you don't trust a reliever to give you clutch moments, probably wouldn't play him. And that's fine if you have better relievers and better players and starters ahead of them, which fortunately, when healthy, the Knicks absolutely do.
It's wild. I was looking at earlier today, I was looking at the statistics, the on-off statistics since Bogey and Burks got here. And in that time, it's a dozen games, not a huge sample size. The biggest, their best player by on-off, by far, it's not close, even more than Brunson, is Precious. They're like plus, I think it's 1.8 with him on the floor. So like not crazy, but it's okay. Brunson's the only other guy that's a positive. And then when Precious has been off the court, which has not been for many minutes, granted, they're getting destroyed by like 20 points or 21 points per 100 possessions. It's wild. And yes, that speaks to some of the struggles of the new guys from Detroit, which we'll get to that a little bit later in the episode. We got a lot to get to. I keep saying we're going to get to stuff. All right, let's talk about the week that was. It was a weird week because you came off of the vibes of one of the best wins of the season, if not the best win of the season in Cleveland. And you started the week off with a game without Jalen Brunson that ended up being a 16-point loss to the Hawks. That was not. It was a much closer game than that. It was a very competitive game that got away from them late when they just finally ran out of gas. And it was like, okay, we won our game without Brunson. We could kind of afford to drop that one. Even considering your comment before, which is true about like you could only, get burned so many times and still live to talk about it. Then you had again another contender for best win of the season against the Magic. Just an outstanding defensive effort, an outstanding effort top to bottom. They looked crisp. They looked every positive thing you could say about a basketball team you could apply to the Knicks that night. And then it goes from that to a game where any negative thing you could say about a basketball team other than effort. Like I thought, am I wrong in that? I thought their effort was fine on Sunday night. It's just they couldn't do anything right.
Effort hasn't waned that often.
Yeah.
It's hard to fault them, especially down that many players. No, it's accurate. It's fair. The Hawks game was tough. Jalen Johnson,
he's
phenomenal.
Awesome.
And it hurts when the Knicks just don't have the personnel healthy to contain him in any way. And that's the most unfortunate part. And of course, you could say there's been a lot of teams, a lot of situations. But man, what would this stretch have looked like if the Knicks were healthy? And we don't know. We won't know. It doesn't matter. Just get healthy and figure out the rest. But to be able to deal with the size that Atlanta presented. And I got to say, there's something about the Hawks, even if the numbers don't necessarily show it. It's kind of like this feeling of they can play really well when they just have one of Murray and Young on the floor.
I agree with that.
Didn't have two of them. They had one of them. And DeJounte Murray, able to do something, shows that he's a good player in the right circumstance. Of course, the right circumstance is when they're not both present. So Knicks, of course, facing that. And then the Orlando matchup, just the defense was fantastic. Hartenstein looking so good, back to what you're hoping for. And I think the Knicks, I believe, are 5-10 in their last 15, which
that sounds right. I know they're if we count the Cavs game as a non-Brunson game, I know they are 7-7 with that, or in the last 14 games that Brunson has played, and I think 1-3 in the games that he hasn't.
The kind of snip snap motion is not exactly enjoyable, but I can't fault the most recent game, for your point, as lack of effort. It felt as though there was maybe a handful of clean looks all game. I know watching it in the second half, when it truly felt like there was one actual clean look that hadn't been seen in a while, it led to an open three that the Knicks hit. Sucks.
My biggest takeaway from, because like we always kind of say, like, what's the biggest takeaway from last week? And my biggest takeaway from last week, if we're gonna, even if we could even include the Cavs game, like that was such an outstanding effort from, I think in the Cavs game, you saw the absolute very best of what the non-Brunson pieces of this team can give you. And I would say in the Sixers game, you saw the absolute worst of what the non-Brunson pieces on this team are capable of giving you. And then there's Brunson, who, like, he's like, we can't complain about Jalen Brunson, especially. That's why I kind of separated out 7-7 without OG Anunoby, Julius Randle, Mitchell Robinson in the lineup, I think by any metric, I don't care how much you love Dante DiVincenzo and Isaiah Hartenstein, who's been hobbled for most of the time, but Josh Hart, all these guys, take away OG, Julius, and Mitch, and even with Brunson, this is a play-in roster. Would you agree? Is there any real argument against that?
I don't believe so.
Yeah. So, the fact that they are a 500 team essentially with him without those other guys. Not essentially, they are. You can't ask any more of your star, and he has come up big time and time again. Yeah, he had an off night against the Sixers. I'm not going to kill him for it. He was off from outside. And then the other kind of joining takeaway with that is when you only have one star and it's a bunch of role players. Well, if that star all of a sudden is having an off shooting night from outside, which Brunson was, and your major structural limitation with this version of the roster is outside shooting, it allows teams to play the brand of defense that we saw the Sixers play. We've seen some other teams try to play, and the Knicks could break that if they hit some outside shots and start feeling good about themselves early in the game. And they didn't do that. And this thing was a snowball rolling downhill. And that's why I think, to your point, which was a great point, by a certain point in this game, it felt like, my God, they're just not getting any looks. I think part of that was because they just didn't have a lot of confidence in their ability to make anything by a certain point. And they just kind of felt the need to continue trying to manufacture something that was not there to be manufactured because of how the Sixers defense was playing them. So look, we know what the long story short is. They need to get their guys back. And I guess maybe this is a good transition. I wonder if it's just OG Anunoby. What does that mean? What does that look like? Maybe we could spend a second on that before we get to the playoff picture. Let's start with this. Who do you think the new starting lineup is going to be? Because frankly, I could see Tibbs going a couple of different ways. I have my gut feeling of what it is, but I'm curious what you think.
My guess is it's really just swapping Hart for Anunoby and keeping Chua.
Okay.
Just because of how, it's been talked about, the impact of defense and rebounding. And maybe the Knicks scale up a bit. Maybe they're able to create more opportunities where OG sees time at what would be the 4. But I could see Tibbs having a rotation where Hart and Anunoby and Bogdanovich see time together in a way of balancing out where, okay, let's get enough gravity where Hart can sort of sag off of a player or at least spot up on the offensive end, because there's going to be attention focused on an elite corner shooter in Anunoby, and Bogdanovich gets the right looks, but it's still so much of it on the offensive. And I'm not the offensive part is great because OG, once he comes back, it's going to be cleaner looks just because of his shooting abilities and more threes I expect. But man, the Randle of it all, just the looks that the Knicks generate. It's hard for us to talk about a game where the Knicks got so few looks and be like, well, the OG factor is so important. And it's like, well, what about the guy who creates so many double teams that he kicks out? And DJ's been on this constantly about how important the offense has looked without someone like Randle creating those looks, the open ones that you get. So I'm very excited for OG, but it's like each side, like, great, the defense is going to be good. But I also look at this Knicks team and I'm looking at a team that has held an opponent under 80 points the last 2 games. And I'm not saying it's all because of the defense. It seemed like a lot of it was just bad process from the Sixers perspective. The Magic game, I thought defense certainly locked in, but if we're talking about offense and we're talking about shooting and the lack thereof, it's hard not to look at the Randle portion. But I'm shifting gears in terms of what you said.
No,
my guess would be Anunoby for Hart, and Hart comes off the bench, especially because of how much he's been playing, how taxing it's been, wanting to not burn through him too quickly. I mean, that plant-based diet is great, but it's not going to save his knees. Rest probably wouldn't hurt him. So Achua being that starting 4 until Randle comes back feels like an angle I could see Tibbs going. You're correct to go right to the Randle thing, because what you're telling me OG Anunoby was going to make them a functional offense last night? I mean, maybe. I shouldn't say that. Maybe he would have. Maybe having that one additional shooter out there would have made the difference.
So let me start with this. Even with last night, the starting five as it currently exists: Brunson, DiVincenzo, Hart, Achua, and Hartenstein. Is via cleaning the glass. It's up to 367 possessions, which is about 200. Actually, no, probably a little under 200 minutes. But these are non-garbage time possessions. There are plus 6.8 per 100 with a 76th percentile offense, 119.3 points per 100 scored, and an 80th percentile defense, which that their defensive number had been atrocious and has gone way down over the last few games. 112.5 given up. And that's still with an opponent effective field goal percentage that's pretty high, 56.9. That's a high number. So I'm listening to what you said. I'm like, well, if that's the number with the current group, and then all of a sudden you put OG Anunoby in for Josh Hart, and you're getting a better defender, you're getting a guy that can, obviously defenses are going to respect more, at least from the corners, certainly. And that's, I imagine they're still going to have him a decent amount. Does he, and he's great in transition, which is another Hart positive. Like, he does a lot of the things he brings a lot of things that Josh Hart brings. Maybe the one thing is like Josh Hart's a bit more savvy in terms of a ball mover in the half court, but like, I don't know. Give me OG. So like, you get, again, trying to have your cake and eat it too. It makes a lot of sense. And at the same time, I'm like, man, you said it. Hart is Tibbs' guy. He's 9 straight games of 40 minutes or more. That has not been done since 2016, prior to Hart doing it now. If he goes 10 straight, he's going to be one of like a handful of guys, 6-7 guys that have done this in the last 15 years. Tibbs trusts Hart. Clearly, he trusts Hart. So I don't know. My gut feeling is it's going to be Hart that stays in the starting five, and yet logically, I completely agree with you that it should be Precious. So I'm kind of torn. The last thing I'll say on this, and I don't know if it has and it should matter. The nice thing about bringing Hart off the bench and keeping Precious in the starting five, I think it's two things. One, I think it helps you address the biggest weakness of the team right now, which is the bench, because I think having Hart come off the bench is a little bit more impactful than having Precious come off the bench. That's number one. And two, it increases your versatility in terms of you could bring in Josh Hart for DiVincenzo. You could bring him in for Precious. You could bring him in for OG. Hell, you could bring him in for Isaiah Hartenstein. If you really wanted to, you could bring him in for Jalen Brunson. I don't think they're going to do that. But like, you could, because he's quote unquote positionless, you could bring him in for all these different guys and it makes sense. So I don't know. Neither would shock me. I'll say that. Neither would shock me.
The size factor, I think, is important, because if you continue to start Hart, then you're looking at 3 players who are 6'5" and under.
Yep.
In the starting lineup. And
they have now, but
right. But that's more by force. Like, if you're able to introduce a 6'8" archetype at the 3 and D, who's one of the best at what he does, or arguably the best at what he does, you're probably not going to want to scale in a way where, or you could instead have Brunson and DiVincenzo, and you have your spacing threat with Anunoby, who's 6'8", and you also have Achua, who's, I believe, 6'9", and Hartenstein, who's 7 feet. There's just something a little bit more intimidating about that for a coach who just appreciates size quite like Tibbs does.
But that's why they've been so good. The number I said, 119.3 points per 100 on offense, that's not entirely due to this, but it's a lot due to the fact that they have a 32 or nearly a 33 offensive rebound percentage, which is like, that's obviously would be the best in the league. Like, they're getting a ton of offensive rebounds. If you keep Achua in there, you can still maintain that, but you get the benefits of OG. Yeah. What you're saying, I agree with you.
Well, look at what Hart did yesterday. He had 4 offensive rebounds in 1 possession, right?
Yeah, he did.
And that was in that first quarter. It was insane.
Yeah.
And so that's something that could be provided.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens. Let's say this. I hope it's against Philly, because that, Shams' wording is, as Shams always tends to do, very, very careful. Could be as early as, against the Sixers. Here's why I really hope it is against Philly, because the standings right now are they are a jumbled mess. So Andrew here has a playoff picture in which he has, look, he's going to put it up for us. How great is that? If you're watching on YouTube, you're seeing this right now. If you're listening at home, you're shit out of luck. So this is the playoff picture where all teams stand record-wise, as well as all of the games, next 5 games coming up for each of these teams. So I should also note, I probably should have filibustered for another minute. The Cleveland game against the Suns is almost over. So the Cavs are either going to move up into a tie with Milwaukee, or they're going to drop a game and come a little bit closer to the Knicks. Frankly, I am not thinking about the 2-3 so much at this point, although I should note Donovan Mitchell missed his 17th or 18th game tonight, in which, and he's dealing with an injury thing. So, and the Cavs do not play well with him. So Milwaukee 42-23, Cleveland.
How about this?
Yes.
Work your way up. Let's
up.
Let's go. Let's start with the 8 seed.
Okay, we start with the 8 seed.
I'm trying to buy you as much time as possible. I'm even.
There you go.
Right? Just trying to buy time here.
Who's better than you?
Yeah.
Let's start at 8. So 8, Miami, the Miami Heat, the dreaded, awful, hated Miami Heat, 35-29. Their upcoming schedule, they play the Nuggets on Tuesday. I believe it's Tuesday night. Their next game is against the Nuggets. And then they 4 straight on the road, but the opponents at Detroit, back-to-back. Although the Pistons are playing, I say this with a straight face, the Pistons have been playing better lately. And then at Philly, who knows if we maybe get some Embiid news before long. And then at Cleveland, 7th place, Indiana. They are 36-29, so currently a half game ahead of the Miami Heat. Again, they're in the other play-in spot. They travel to OKC before a 3-game homestand against the Chicago Bulls, who up until tonight at least have been playing very good ball. Then the Nets, the Cavs, and then they go to Detroit. So Detroit clearly factoring in significantly as it pertains to the East playoff race.
I have a question.
And in 6, what's that?
Real quick.
Yes.
You had said on a not too distant podcast that you were still like the team you wouldn't want to face is Indiana.
Yeah, I did say that.
Do you still feel that way, or are you better?
Am I better? Like, did I recover?
I heard a fire alarm in the hotel, so I just like started word vomiting. Do you feel more comfortable doing that?
No, your phrasing was perfect.
I don't know.
I feel better.
Got spooked by it.
Real quick, pausing the pod. Is everything okay?
I have no idea.
Okay, because I heard it too, and I wondered the exact same thing. You're good.
It's fine. Listen, it's Waingro. It's Waingro's and is being held up in a room down the hallway. So I'll say this: if Bobby De Niro knocks on your door, I would not advise you to open the door. But Jeremy can't hear me now because you ran to the door. So I'm just talking to myself.
You're talking to me, but I
am talking to you. To you. Really, all this should be left in the pod.
I think I might leave it in just because. For those who can't see, John is on screen by himself. I'm off screen because that's how the layoff works. Said playoff picture that I created is on screen with us. Yes, and Jeremy's hotel room is featured.
And I'm going to answer Jeremy's question, even though he's not here to hear me answer it. My Indiana, let me say this about my Indiana fascination is I continue, even now, even as they've been struggling lately, I continue to be so impressed with their ability to not care about the fact that they give up 1 billion points a night. And it doesn't seem to impact their ability to play their style of basketball. Now, their style of basketball obviously entails giving up 1 billion points a night. I just like I've used this analogy before. The most dangerous thing in the world to me is facing somebody that has nothing to lose, and the Pacers seem to play a brand of basketball in which they have nothing to lose on any possession. And it's like other teams, when you go on a run against them, it's a big deal. To the Pacers, it's like, well, of course you're going to go on a run against them because everybody goes on a run against us. And they're like, they deal with it and they move on. Now, it doesn't mean they're going to win. It doesn't mean that they are not grievously impacted by their recent injury to Ben Mathurin, which coupled with the fact that they decided to trade Buddy Hield, which I don't know about how that's working out at this point. To answer your question, Jeremy, I do fear them less. I'm not sure if I'm like gung ho, ready to run into like, yes, give me the Pacers in the playoffs, because I respect Halliburton. I think Siakam's a guy, as a number 2. He could do what he has to do. I think it would be a long series. I think and that's the other thing. Like when you play a team like the Pacers and they play their brand of basketball, they're going to have hot shooting nights and they're going to take a game or two off of you. Like it doesn't matter what you do. Like that's my belief. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the Knicks play them in the playoffs and sweep them. But my stance has changed a bit.
Fair enough.
And you're not on fire, so we can continue the podcast. Which is
usually my hair is, but right now, fortunately not. It's we're good. Yeah. And we bought enough time talking about the Cleveland Cavaliers, of course, but we'll continue.
They lost.
We'll still work our way up. Yeah.
We'll still work our way up. Okay. So that's the play-in situation. Philly obviously plays the Knicks, and then they head to Milwaukee. Back-to-back home games, Charlotte and Miami. So that game against the Heat will loom large for both teams. And then they head to Phoenix, who was the team that just beat Cleveland as we are recording this. Fifth place, Orlando. All right, sorry, I didn't say Philly's record. So Philly 36-28, half a game ahead of Indiana. So if you're keeping track, Miami half a game behind Indiana, who's a half game behind Philly, who is a half game behind Orlando. All of these teams separated by half game. Orlando's upcoming schedule: Brooklyn at home. I think the Nets. Is it possible that some Nets players are actually already in Cancun right now as we are recording this?
It's possible. I mean, they've been winning a couple games here and there.
I don't know. I don't feel great about the Nets' chances of beating the Magic.
At least one player is probably in Cancun.
So we know who he is. We don't need to talk about him. Then the Magic head north of the border for the first in a home and home against the Raptors. Then they come back home, play the second half of that home and home, and then the Charlotte Hornets and the New Orleans Pelicans. And then we have our Knicks, who are a half game ahead of Orlando. And they, of course, after they play Philly, they head on their 4-game West Coast road trip, which gets progressively harder game by game. Starts out in Portland, then they head to Sacramento, who has had one of the most bizarre seasons of any NBA team, if not the most bizarre season. They've wildly fluctuated in terms of their how well they've played and how poorly they've played at times, but they could come out and have a great game. You never know. Then they head to Golden State. Steph Curry, we figure, will be back for that game, although we'll see with his recent injury. And then that road trip ends in a place that you really don't want to end a 4-game road trip. And that's at the world champion Denver Nuggets, who are starting to kind of put it together. Ahead of the Knicks, and we can now officially say it because they lost, the Cleveland Cavaliers are 41-24, which means that they are, is my math correct, 3.5 games ahead of the Knicks? Does that sound right? Yeah.
That would be correct.
Okay. 3-game road trip coming up for them. Pelicans, Rockets, Pacers, and then they head home to face Miami's. And then last but not least, Milwaukee, who I think at this point is I'd be shocked if they did not end up with one of the top 3 seeds. They head to Sacramento, and then home for Philly and the Suns, at Boston, and then Brooklyn. So tough schedule for Milwaukee. It's the one thing you do want to say about the Bucks. They have a very, very tough schedule. One of the hardest schedules in the league coming down the stretch. So I don't know. Maybe we'll see. I guess I don't know. What are we thinking looking at this? Where are we going to be sitting here talking, let's say 2 weeks from now? Because we have the next 5 games listed out here for all these teams.
Don't think it'll be a great place. Just candidly, I don't expect a whole lot from the next 5 games. It's tough. I could see 2 and 3 to me would be palatable, but it's very difficult. I mean, You're playing a Sixers team that's now getting Maxey back. You're getting OG Anunoby back, hopefully. That would be great. And I think I have faith against beating Portland and maybe Sacramento, but the Warriors, that seems like the perfect way for Steph Curry to come back from an injury, because why wouldn't he? And then you face Denver, a team that the Knicks have beaten once in Denver since 2006. And it was last year when Jokic wasn't playing. So I could see a scenario where the Knicks are fighting for a playoff seed and not the play-in, and people being very nervous because the margin of error is even slimmer. But it's hard. Like, I don't want to say these are scheduled losses ahead, because they're not. The games haven't been played yet, but I don't feel great about it considering how they've played. Like, it's 5-10 the last 15. You also, if we had talked about this, where it was, hey, what if the Knicks were, if you said at the beginning of the season, what if the Knicks were missing 60% of their starting lineup, you'd probably be refreshing Tankathon quite a bit. And they're not in that position right now. So I actually think they've been treading water pretty well for a team that's just continuously getting hit at the knee with injuries. But I don't, talking about 2 weeks from now, I don't think it's going to be a very encouraging conversation. It's going to be, they've got 3 weeks or so left to really ensure that they don't have to play in a do or die game to make the playoffs. Yeah. And we'll get to that then, but for the next couple of weeks, it's not very encouraging, just based on the schedule and where they're at.
I mean, let's say I feel a little bit better than you.
Okay.
I feel a little bit better than you for a couple of reasons. One, the record with Brunson. And again, without OG Anunoby, it's 7-7. And if you figure OG comes back, like, is 2-3 on the table in these next 5 games? Absolutely, 2-3 is on the table. But I know it's not up here for all of us to see. But when they finish this 4-game West Coast road trip, and I'll pull it up right here because I always have it pretty handy. It's the next 4 games after that: Brooklyn at home, Detroit at home, Toronto on the road, San Antonio on the road. Now, look, at this point in the year, crazy. It's wild and wacky times in the NBA. I just said Detroit's been playing better. Brooklyn Knicks games are always, those guys always get up for those games. Toronto, like, you don't think RJ and Quickly are going to get up for a game in their home arena against their old team. And then San Antonio, I don't know if anybody's been paying attention to what Victor Wembanyama's been doing of late, but like, that team, I know he's been missing games also, but like, they've been playing well. So like nothing's easy, but like, those are all games the Knicks like can win for sure. Like, maybe the Denver game, not so much. Do I think they have to beat Philly to like stay out of the play-in? I don't know if I want to go that far, but like, yeah, the Philly game's a massive game. Like, they have to show up against like that Philly game. The Magic game was the most important game of the season. Now this Philly game is the most important game of the season. There's no two ways about it. The other reason I feel a little bit more encouraged is just, again, looking at some of these other teams, what they have in front of them. Like, Miami could very well go 3-2 in these next 5, if not 2-3. Like, crazy things have happened. Same thing, Indiana. Same thing, Philly, especially if we could beat Philly in this upcoming game. Orlando's the one team where you look at and you're like, okay, well, the Magic might be favored in all 5 of their next bunch of games, but I don't know. Is that the worst thing in the world if the Magic end up grabbing the 4 seed and the Knicks are there battling for that would be an interesting one, right? Like, the Knicks, would they go all out? I'm sure they would, to get the 5 seed, but that also puts them in the Boston side of the bracket. So I don't know. We're getting way ahead of ourselves. We'll talk about all that stuff as it becomes more relevant. But
say this though, the Nuggets are currently down by 18 points to the Raptors at home. So we'll see if that score holds in Toronto's favor. But it's not like a team can't go in any given night and win.
They can. They can. We'll see. We'll see what happens
when healthy. Just saying, when healthy, the Knicks beat the Nuggets by 38 on their own home court.
Yes.
So to say that they can't win in Denver, of course,
right.
They absolutely can. And I was the one who was being more pessimistic. You were certainly more optimistic, but it's daunting to go into Mile High City and win a game. It's very tough.
When healthy, if I was a betting man right now, I would bet that we are not going to see Julius until after the stretch of games that I just referenced. So 5 games plus the 4 that I referenced, that's 9 more. So what does that leave? Like 7 or 8 games left in the season. That's kind of where, that leaves 9 left in the regular season. That's when I bet you he makes, if I was to put a chip on it right now, I would put it on Sunday, March 31st, Oklahoma City home, which would then make the next game at Miami. Which would be something.
Let me ask you, do you think that there's a chance that Mitch comes back before Julius?
No.
Okay. So you don't think Mitch is back until at least April?
I think they are going to bring Mitch back. If he's back before the playoffs at all, I think they're going to bring him back in enough time where they're going to, in their minds, enough time for them to get his conditioning to a place where they feel like his conditioning will be okay by game 1 of the playoffs. I think that's going to be their only concern.
Okay. Because he's running and jumping. And
he is running and jumping.
Contact is not really the thing that he has to worry about, whereas Randall does.
Yeah.
I agree with you for whatever it's worth. I think easier chance that Randall's back. I just don't know if it's quite as far in March, but no one knows because that's just
no one knows
how the Knicks operate.
I'm talking out of my ass. I'm guessing. That's just literally a guess.
Well,
okay.
That's
what we do. We have a podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Game ball. Let's give it out. Given to a player, coach, or entity that stood out this week and deserves special recognition, largely based on the first 2 games of the week. Josh Hart played 128 minutes in 3 games. We're keeping those minute totals high. Precious Achiuwa had a game where he 15 points, 14 rebounds, 5 blocks. Andrew didn't say it here. He also had 4 assists and I think it was 2 steals. Whatever it was, I looked it up after the game. No Knick had that stat line since Patrick Ewing in 96, I believe. He had 9 blocks in 99 minutes this week, and he's actually been hitting some threes. Deuce McBride, 14 points and 3 for 3 from 3 versus Orlando. He was 6 of 15 from 3 this week. John Starks, shout out to John Starks. Stopped by the KFS, our lounges yesterday that we had for the game. Gave a warm welcome to everybody, and it was cool to see John. And Jalen Brunson, he was 11 of 19 and 4 of 7 from 3 in the Orlando win. And yes, to me, Jalen Brunson, you are perfect. So this is my pick. It's an interesting one. It's tough because you're coming off that shit burger. I'm going to give it to Precious. Achiuwa. I don't think I've given it to Precious Achiuwa. Yeah, I don't think I've given it to Precious Achiuwa at all recently. I don't know if I've ever given it to Precious Achiuwa, but I'll pull it up right now. This is the exact numbers as courtesy of the NBA.com's lineup page. This is in the 159 minutes over the last 12 games that Precious Achiuwa. I know this is a weekly award, but I'm just going back over the last 12 because I think it's relevant. 159 minutes over the last 12 games that Achiuwa has not played. The New York Knicks are scoring 96.1 points per 100 possessions, and they are giving up 118.4 points per 100 possessions for a negative 22.3 net rating. Combined with the fact that there are plus 1.8 with him on the floor, that means Precious Achiuwa is good for plus 24 points per 100 possessions when he's on the floor. That's pretty freaking good. I know he's not perfect. I know his presence out there makes them much easier to defend. I get that. I acknowledge that. The guy's been really good, and he's been everything that they could possibly have hoped. I mean, he's been better than they could have possibly hoped for. So I'll give my game ball to Precious Achiuwa.
A great candidate. I am going to give my game ball to the 81 other guests who accompanied us to
That's a great call.
The Garden last night. It's astounding to me. We 2 years ago, I believe, launched the first KFS at MSG game, and we were hoping to sell out a lounge, and it took some effort. And we were able to do it, but it was all right. Well, we've made some traction. Let's try it again next year. And then last year we did it, and we sold out before we even got past the patrons. And we did it again. And this year we had a wait list that was so long that we thought, let's try to make it 2 lounges. And I still can't believe that we sold out 2 lounges of Knicks fans bonded by this podcast. And it's humbling, it's rewarding, it's awesome. And so I'm super appreciative of all the people who were able to join us. Those who weren't able to attend, you were there in spirit. Those who want to attend in the future, we're going to keep making this a thing. Even if they keep losing, we're going to keep doing it. It's just going to happen. So, but thank you to everyone who made another really memorable opportunity at the Garden. It meant a lot to the 3 of us. And we're excited for more games in the future. So,
yes, we'll keep trying until we get a win. Good call. That is the appropriate game ball to give out this week.
Look, you got on court and off the court. We got it covered. Between the 2 of us.
All right. Detention given to a player, coach, or entity that deserves to sit down for a while and think about what they did wrong. Our candidates: pick any Knicks player or Knicks coach or Knicks podcast from last night. That's candidate number 1. Dante DiVincenzo. Finally, after being just blazing hot from 3 really since like the opening couple of weeks of the season. He's 11 of 39 from long range over over 117 minutes this week, 28.2%. Pick a Piston. Bogey, minus 26 and 61 minutes this week. Burks, minus 21 and 29 minutes this week. And of course, Jaime Jaquez Jr. still here, but his sentence is officially up for parole with Randall's return just around the corner. Fuck that. Fuck him. Jeremy, it's your pick.
I'm going to go with the Bojan Bogdanovic this time around.
I really wanted him.
He's going to be my pick.
Damn it.
You wanted him?
I really wanted him. I did.
I got to say, it's really frustrating because in my mind, when you acquire someone like Bojan Bogdanovic, you're getting quality player with the eyes on the future with the whole goal of continuous soup. But John, all Bojan has been, as of this moment, has been continuous poop. It's just been heartbreaking to watch this man do the one thing he's supposed to do, but not do it, right? Like the threes, the efficiency, the lack thereof. Like that's why you're here, Bojan. That's why you're in the building. We talked about when the trade went down, there was a reason why these players weren't acquired for a first round pick. But it went from still a really good trade to, okay, this is a trade. Maybe it's a fairway trade. It's difficult. It's really tough. I mean, we're talking about someone who Clean the Glass has him in the 3rd percentile at the rim, the 56th
with the
percentile. With the Knicks, right? 56th percentile from 3. It's efficiency is in the toilet. And I get it, right? It's been 11 games. This is an 8th of the season pretty much, but it's not good enough. And I understand that perhaps with Julius back, if they decide to play Bojan and Julius together, which I don't even know if they will, that seems like it might be a tricky pairing. And that's kind of where I'm at, where it's like, that's the hope. And I understand that Bojan is essentially an 8th or 9th man who at this point has to be a 6th or 7th man. But it's also just, you have to make those shots. He made life so much harder on the Knicks. And a lot of it was the open looks. When he does a lot of the creation, I feel like everything struggles. But if he's able to be sitting, waiting and ready, life opens up a little bit more. So yes, it is still those looks, but I don't know where all of those looks are coming from, because with the exception of Randall, maybe it has to do with the staggering that the Knicks do. Once they get Randall back, able to, pair players together, the shot either comes around or it doesn't. And I don't know if the looks are going to increase drastically, but they need to. I was never counting on Bojan come playoff time. I'm still not really counting on him. He may very easily have his one shining moment, but I don't see him being a consistent player because of what he gives up on the opposite end. But as of this moment, even if he's miscast, it's not good enough. And the Knicks are getting significant contribution for someone like Josh Hart when they need it most. They're not getting it from Alec Burks, and they're certainly not getting it from Bojan Bogdanovic. He's got to be better.
You think?
Anyone with eyes, even without.
No,
yeah.
I wanted Bogey I wanted Bogey because I disagree with you. Something you just said. I was counting on Bogey for the playoffs, and you know what? To a certain extent, I think I still am. And even if it was 16, 18, maybe get a little ambitious, 20 minutes a game. Like playoff games are won and lost because of a guy that could come off the bench and give you the right 16 to 18 minute performance. And I thought Bogey, and again, I don't want to put this in past tense because it hasn't happened yet. Maybe he can still do it. I do have some faith in him, but like that he could be that guy. But more than that, to really help bridge the gap, to come in here and like just be invigorated by the fact that he was playing for a real team with real aspirations. And I'm not saying he's coming here and like dogging it. It's just the performance has not been what it needs to be. It just has not been effective. And so that's why he was going to be my pick, because again, I expected more of him. Burks, it's funny, I looked it up earlier today, cleaning the glass. Both of these guys, when they were with Detroit, 70th percentile efficiency. Like the Knicks were not going crazy when they traded for these guys. Like these guys had, and you could argue that like, okay, well, that was with Detroit where they had no spacing or nobody else to threaten the defense. Imagine what they're going to be like when they come here and like they're playing off Jalen Brunson, the whole thing. Hasn't happened. But you know what? I'm going to take Burks and I'm going to embrace Burks as my detention pick. I'm looking at it right now. His first game with the Knicks, he had a barely positive box plus minus, this is according to Basketball Reference, of 0.9. This is after in his last 5 games with the Pistons, 4 out of the 5 positive box plus minus. He was a positive, impactful player for Detroit before he came here. After that positive 0.9 against Indiana, Alec Burks has not had a positive in the box plus minus column once. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times he has had a negative double-digit box plus minus performance for the Knicks. He has had an effective field goal percentage in a game for the Knicks above 50 twice. It's the first Indy game, and then in the game against Philly, where everybody was going crazy on offense over the first half. I'll just say it. Has Alec Burks played his last rotation minute for this team? If OG Anunoby comes back against Philly, so they're going to have, whoever moves to the bench, let's say Hart goes to the bench. So you have Hart coming off the bench. You have Bogey, who I think will get minutes, and you have Deuce, and then you have your backup center. So as it is, Alec Burks is playing 10 minutes a game. Hell, against Orlando, he played 5 minutes. I don't know, man. I how much longer should the leash be, or should the rope be? I really don't know. He has not. I'll say this: he has not played well enough to warrant holding on to a rotation spot at this point for me.
I would agree. I would feel more comfortable playing Deuce McBride, but just to go back to me, when the trade went down, it was Bogdanovich is an innings eater. Hope to get something out of Burks because you need backup point guard minutes. Still not getting that with Deuce. You're getting at other things that are great, but he's not going to be the guy to run an offense. But it turns out it's not going to be Burks either. But Bogdanovich, it was, in my mind at least, you bring him in to be maybe 12 minutes per game in the playoffs, maybe, depending on matchups. Fair. But fair. Primarily because if you're relying that heavily on a 35-year-old who's that poor defensively, you've got larger issues.
Sure.
And it's not a fault of Bogdanovich's. It's just the way it is. So, but and this kind of segues us into another separate conversation, which is, since I was last year, the Knicks signed Shake Milton to a rest of season contract. And he is situational, which of course, as we know, is code for not going to see time, even when the Knicks were incredibly thin. When Jalen Brunson's not playing and all of it, obviously he came back pretty soon after, which was great. But it also brings up a larger conversation, which I saw when I was not on the podcast, which is this, I don't want to say obsession, but a lot of fans look towards these buyout market players as people who will help save the team or guide them. And in reality, there is a big reason why they are on the buyout market. Yeah. It's the difference between Kyle Lowry, whose contract was so large that, of course, he was going to be bought out, and someone on a smaller contract like Shake Milton or Danilo Gallinari, or to a different extent, but still significant, Marcus Morris, like guys who are just simply not going to see significant time. And if they do, you're going to have problems. Yeah. And so latching on to players whose names you know of, but you haven't followed them at all, and you're kind of just like hoping that they're going to be great, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. It does, like, forget about the finances or anything involved with that. If you're relying on Shake Milton, who could very easily have a couple of good games, and it's great, but there are going to be far more games where he's not playing or he's not playing well compared to the ones where he is playing well. And I just want fans to keep thinking that in mind as the years continue, because oftentimes if it feels too good to be true, it is. They're quality players, but not going to win you quality minutes most often. Yeah. And that's fine. That's just who they are.
I thought it was a nice signing as a depth piece. I didn't really think it was going to be anything more than that. Right. Look, if he gets time, I'll be hopeful. I think he could do some stuff. He could score. But again, there's a reason the guy was in the position he is. There's always a reason buyout guys are in the position they are, with like rare exceptions. Like Kevin Love's the one I always go back to. That was just a weird situation with Cleveland. Like that is the exception, not the rule. And it's far more often than not, it's something else. Okay. Predictions, where I am still alive and kicking. Thanks to Benji. So I won last week. I am 7-10. You are 10-7. It's a 3-game week. One after another with a game off in between each. Tuesday. So today, when you're listening to this, home game against Philly, then Knicks travel to Portland, and then they travel to Sacramento. Jeremy, I am going to choose to be optimistic. I'm going to go 2-1. And I have a feeling I know. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. I'm not going to say anything else. I'm just going to go 2-1, and I'm going to throw it to you.
Okay. Easy enough. I'm going to go 1-2.
Oh, wow. Okay.
3-0 is a daunting task, even if you get OG back. You have to consider minutes restriction, players gelling, getting back into the swing of things, Maxey coming back. Portland, yes, as we've talked about, could be feisty, but the Kings are such an enigma. My guess is, as it usually happens, this week comes down to the final game, and that determines it. But as usual, if you're taking the better record, I hope you win the week.
Look, it's not based on how they played the other night, obviously. Not that I would be shocked if they lost to Philly. Somehow, some way, I am expecting them to win that Philly game. I don't know how they're going to do it. It might come down to the last shot of the game. I think they will find a way to beat Philadelphia, even with Maxey back. And we should say that Maxey's back. And then from there, I would just be really surprised. I don't know. Maybe they lose to Portland, beat Sacramento. Maybe they beat Portland, lose Sacramento. I just think they're going to split those first two of those games against those two teams. So we'll see what happens. I hope I'm right. I know you hope I'm right. And we will go from there. Okay. On that note, we have, right before we get out of here, quick announcement. So we are doing, hi, Andrew.
Hi. And there's a pop in circumstance I want to add to this. So if you don't,
why don't you do the announcement? Yes.
Yeah. Because Jeremy hit it at the top. I believe both of you hit it at the top. Just a sincere thank you to everybody that joined us yesterday at the Garden for our annual KFS at MSG game. Another sincere thank you on behalf of John and myself to Jeremy, the connection that you make with the Garden and coordinating it to the point where we were able to do not one, but 2 suites or 2 lounges this year. Like you said, 81 people with us in attendance is just pretty insane, especially with how busy your day job is and how much we know that takes away from your availability. So we appreciate you overseeing that. And I want to give a shout out to everybody that hit us up yesterday saying thank you for putting this together. But to everybody else, I'd also like to say shout out to you for telling us to never do another event again because the KFS curse is real. And our response to said order of never doing an event again is to announce the next KFS live event will take place on March 23rd, Saturday at T Squared Social. They're doing, it's called the Mega Bowl at the moment. I think they're going to rework that name. But on that Saturday, the Knicks play at 1:00 against little brother across the river, Brooklyn Nets. They will be at the Garden. I will say that. It will be a home game. Well, it would have been a home game anyway, but it will be at Madison Square Garden. Games at 1:00. We'll be there at noon. Hang out with us there. There are multiple sporting events going on that day, including the Saturday of March Madness. So this is the round of 32. So other games will be on during the Knicks game, but that is a Knicks watch party that you are going to attend. And then if you're like me and Jeremy, although Jeremy, I don't think you'll be in attendance, but we're both Rangers fans.
I'll be there before because I'll be at the game. So I'll be.
Okay. So you'll be there with us for the pregame party before you head to MSG. But afterwards, shout out to the Blue Shirt Breakaway podcast. There will be a New York Rangers watch party. So if you'd like to spend the entire day there or go to one of the legs of the T Squared Social event, if you're going to the game, we'll hang out afterwards. My availability is kind of free. My wife has plans that day, so I'm just going to hang out at T Squared Social. So join us on Saturday, March 23rd. At T Squared, the place we did the Lakers watch party, where that will be the time we break the KFS curse. I'm putting that into the universe now. So Saturday, March 23rd, Knicks Nets. Join us. We look forward to seeing all of you there.
Well said.
Yeah.
I like it. I don't got anything else. Andrew, anything?
Literally said the thing I came here to say.
Yeah, well, maybe there's something else. Jeremy, any thoughts from you?
All good.
Good. Do I have anything I want to say? No, I don't think so. Thanks to everybody who came out to the game. Seriously, I know I'm a miserable old man, and if the Knicks don't perform, I just am incapable of being happy. But it was great, genuinely great to see so many people, and people, I think, and I speak for everybody here, people always come up to us and say just some of the kindest things that you've ever heard in your life. And it may not seem like it in the moment, but I could assure you that like those things resonate and stick with us. And we appreciate them beyond our ability to say how much we appreciate them in a space like this. So thank you to everybody who came out, who's all of that stuff. And we'll see you with more fun and games. What do we got next, Andrew? We got
the next thing that will be we got a watch along for Knicks Sixers on Tuesday night, and then a post game pod.
Perfect.
Post game live stream, post game pod, all the above.
Looking forward to that. All right, join us for that stuff, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. Peace out.